Good evening. Welcome to Earth to the Other Side. My name's John. Tonight I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Robert Christopher Copus. Dr. Copus is the author of Messages from the Light and also his latest, which is called Impressions of Near-Death Experiencers, which he interviewed and included over 100 quotes from these near-death experiencers. As I mentioned, we'll also be speaking with Kathy McDaniel, and she has written a book called Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat. And we'll be discussing a little bit about her distressing near-death experience. Thank you both for being here. It's great to have you.
Welcome.
Wonderful.
Nice to be at your show.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Copus, if that's okay. I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions, and then I'll just hand over the floor to Kathy afterwards. What initially inspired you to embark on your research for near-death experiences?
That was really long ago. That was when I was doing my studies, economics. So that shows that even economists can be spiritually oriented. And then I read the book by Raymond Moody. And you have to know that I'm Roman Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic with hell and purgatory. And I always thought that it didn't resonate with me. But you believe what your parents tell you. So I believed in hell and purgatory, but there was something with me that I didn't believe that. And then I read the book by Raymond Moody, and in his book, there is someone talking about her life review. And the life review is something very special in an NDE because it shows the details of your life. And you can access any part of it. But the interesting thing is you see everything from the point of view of also an other. So you are not only the actor, but you're also the receiver. And this person saw what she had done to others, and then she noticed no one judged her. There was no hell or purgatory, nothing. There was only unconditional love, and that remained like that. And the thing was that if there is someone who judged you or her in this case, it was herself, no one else. The light was there, the light emitting unconditional love, didn't judge, didn't do any step in order to judge. And that was, when I read that, I thought, that's how it is. I've been always, sort of lied to by my parents. I still love them very dearly, but I thought this is something they went wrong. And I was in my 20s when I got to that point, and then I stopped believing in hell and purgatory altogether. I only believe in heaven, and I think that word is even wrong, but that's what I think is the right thing, and is based on what I hear from so many near-death experiencers.
Well, you said that you think that the term heaven is wrong. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
You know, heaven and also hell and purgatory are colored by the religion that you are in. And hell is in other religions as well. So like it's in Buddhism and in Hinduism, Islam, and in Judaism, but there's always these cultural colors in it, and heaven the same. In each of those religions, there is a certain way of how to look at that. And if you listen to NDEs, it's totally different. It's the word heaven doesn't apply to it because it is actually everything there is. It's all, and it's more than we can see because we have such a limited view of everything here on earth. On the other side, there's so much more, and it's so big that people can't express what it is. There are no words enough and no concepts in our language, in not any language, to express what it is. And also the fact that time is not there on the other side, or it's all at the same time. Time is no limitation. It's nothing. It has no meaning over there. So those kind of things, if you look at that in that perspective from religions, in religions there's time in heaven, so that's where it is. It's something goes wrong there. That's what I think. So it's much bigger than the heaven that people think of when they come from any one of those religions that I mentioned.
Right, right. Well, with all the, the research and all the NDEs that you've spoken to, what would you say, if there is one, what religion would come, say, closest to the perspective of, NDEs in general, if there is one?
That's such a nice question. Let me tell you this story about, I'll answer it in this way. Howard Storm has had a hellish experience. He wrote a book about it. I think everyone who wrote their distressing story in a book or on an internet, I find them so brave to do so. So, but he wrote his story, and he was rescued by Jesus. Because he asked for Jesus. So if you ask for something, you get it. So he got Jesus. And at this point, I would like to stress also that other deities are being seen in near-death experiences as well, or reported by people. So it's not only Jesus. It's also Buddha, Krishna, Vishnu, and others, and Muhammad. He's not a deity, but he's being seen as well. So when he was rescued, he asked this question. He asked many questions, but one of those was, what is the best religion? And the answer he got from Jesus was, the best religion is the one who brings you closest to the light, or to heaven, or I don't know exactly what words there were, but it was like the religion that brings you closest to this point. And it could be any religion, because religions are made by people. They are formed by people. So if you are a Christian in a certain parish where there is a person that preaches all these terrible things about hell and purgatory, then that's not, well, I don't think that's the right person. And if you go to Islam and there is someone who is preaching about peace and peace and happiness for everyone, I think that's the right one. But you have those people in any religion, and so that's the idea. And I think you can even go about having no religion at all. You don't need to have a religion. It's as long as you. The most important thing is love, and be loved. And I think if people do that, then you're always good. You're always safe. There's no one is being rejected when we die. That's the whole idea. So even without a religion, you will arrive in the right spot.
I totally agree with you. You've talked about unity and interconnectedness, and being sort of like fragments of God. Is this what you believe, that we're all fragments of God, like all one?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not what I believe, but that's what I understand after having spoken to so many NDEs or read so many of those stories. The unity is something that really reoccurs so often in their stories. Just to give you a quote, maybe that's nice. There's a woman who had her NDE, and at one point she had to go back to her body. They said you cannot stay here. That occurs so often to people who had their NDE. So, and some people don't want to do that, and they are being coerced or argued into going back. And this woman, she wanted to go back because she had a child to look after. So she voluntarily went back. There's more people that want to go back voluntarily. And she thought, well, I've seen everything here. It's so simple. It's not very complicated. How is it possible we don't see how it works when we are in our body? And then she thinks, if you are there, you can access all knowledge there is. You know everything. Your expanse is so big, but you have to get that all back into your body, which is too small. And then she thought of one sentence. She thought, if I hold on to that one sentence, then that would say it all. And that one sentence is, all is everything and everything is one. So all is everything and everything is one. And that's what more people say. It is one. We are one big whole. And if you talk about religions, the next step is also what a lot of NDEs say. We are actually also God. And I'd like to give you an example of a quote in my book by a Dutch woman who had her NDE, and she said, "I feel completely perfect, completely one with the light and the love, and I know that it is God. I am in God, and God is in me. We are one. We are perfect unity." And that's how so many people say that. So for many people, it's strange to say that we are all God. But if I read through all the NDEs, if I listen to so many NDEs, that's the conclusion that we come to. So, and the idea of God being this person, because that's in our Christian tradition, it is this always this old man with a long beard. That's a wrong perspective, a wrong image. And that's also what is said in the Bible. Don't make an image of God, not even in your mind, because it will always fall short. And that figures if God is not there, but it is all there is. It's everything. That's why I don't like to use the word God. I prefer the supreme one or so, or the source, because that's where we all come from.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like, all three of us have spoken to many NDEers, and it's often referred to as consciousness, and inside or outside of the body, leaving the body. But at the end of the day, like, where does do you think our consciousness even resides in our body? Because it's not a physical thing. So leaving it to me is what's sort of mysterious. Like I understand the concept that we're associated with our experience and our physical body, but we can't honestly, the essence of who we are, our soul, if you will, isn't really in our body now, is it? Or is it? What do you think?
The thing is that you touch upon something very important, because people could say NDEs are not real because they are a trick of a dying mind, or they are the consequence of lack of oxygen or whatever. There has been research done in the Netherlands for the first time, prospective studies, and also repeated in other countries that show that that's not the case. But more important research is now on veridical observations. And I think it's very important to stress that, because veridical observations is like a kind of a technical term, but what it actually says, it's verifiable out-of-body experiences. So your consciousness leaves your body and can roam around. And that's the first phase of an NDE. So people typically would leave their body. Sometimes it goes so quick, they immediately go to this wonderful other area. Sometimes they have the chance to walk around the hospital or around the crash site, and they see things that they can later relate and tell to people. And those things can be then confirmed independently by others. So that shows that your consciousness can be at another place than your body. To just give you an example, a famous example is the one with the shoe in the ledge of a hospital. A woman was brought into the hospital unconscious. She had her NDE. And in her NDE, she went out of the window and found herself around the roof of the hotel, and she saw a shoe a particular shoe, a Nike, I think it was, with blue colors and a wear spot over the toe and other characteristics. And after she came back again in her body, she asked a nurse, or she told the nurse, and the nurse was so curious. She went over to see all those ledges of the hospital, and she actually found the shoe. And there are hundreds of these stories, and they are grouped together in a wonderful book published by Irons. It's called The Self Does Not Die. And there are hundreds of these stories. And what it shows you is circumstantial evidence that your consciousness can exist separate from your body. Now, then your question is, what is your consciousness? I don't know. It's something. It doesn't weigh anything. It is there, and it can leave the body. It's not confined to the body. As long as we live, it's confined to the body, but it can escape now and then. And that's what NDEs tell. And I think it's important for your listeners to know that these stories are there are so many of those, and they give circumstantial evidence that the consciousness can be separate from the body. And if that's the case, then we should look also at the messages from NDEs, because then those could be true as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're talking to somebody who regularly practices astral projection as well. So, even while you're alive, you can experience it and get messages as well. And in meditation, like, let's be clear, nobody has to die in order to have these really incredibly revealing experiences. It can be had through meditation as well, especially in meditation. It's pretty insane. Some of these spiritually transformative experiences that you probably have both heard about as well from others are incredible. Like, they're so profound. Hypothetical question. Let's say you're in a realm where no matter what you say or how you react, it doesn't affect anyone or anything. And let's say, for example, you're at a cocktail party and someone approaches you who with 100% certainty is way overconfident in their belief that after death, it's lights out, game over. Now, so if you had this opportunity, what story would you draw from, or what would you say to them if you can pick one thing out of a hat to convince them that they're wrong? What would that be?
The answer would be, I wouldn't do that, because, if you really talk to someone who is very skeptical, you can say anything and they will reason against it. I compare that to like there are still people that believe the earth is flat. So even with all the evidence out there, they still believe the earth is flat. I can try to reason against it, but I can use my time for nicer things. And the same is with people that feel that NDEs are nonsense and still believe that it's a trick of the dying brain. Then what I can do is point them out with this book that I mentioned, The Self Does Not Die, with all those stories, but I'm sure they will not read it. So why spend time on them? In that case, I would just grab a drink and talk about something else. Not about politics, but about something, flowers or travels or something else.
It's a really good answer. And I think, I guess what inspired me to ask you that is because, I do believe that some people who are in that predicament want to be convinced, So I thought maybe it would be fun to ask you, but it's a good answer, though. I agree. It's probably you're better off just not going down that road.
Can I just say something else?
Please.
You said before that, you said that NDEs you can have in other circumstances than only being almost dead. And that's actually the case. There have been people having NDEs during a very severe psychological crisis. You hear them often, but you can also hear those stories from people who have been meditating very deeply, as you said just before, or being praying very deeply, and in some cases even spontaneously. It's incredible, but I have seen a few of those stories, not many, but they are there.
Do you think we're aware of the potential choices and outcomes before we go and actually live out our experience?
Yes, I've heard from NDEs that that sometimes they see they can choose their parents, for instance, or they see what kind of life they want to live. They can apparently choose from it. And to give you an example from Betty Guaidano, who's in New York, and she's part of also the organization of IONS there. She said that before her life on Earth, she was like in a kind of supermarket or a big store that she could, as a picture. It's not really how it worked, but she said it was just like I was in this big shopping mall, and I could just pull out from the shelves some experiences that I wanted to have on Earth. And she pulled out the horrible experiences of incest and molestation and drug abuse and all these kind of things. And she lived through these things, but she came to a point where she changed her life. She was able to do that after her NDE, and now she leads a totally different life. But that is just to show you that sometimes people seem to have a choice what kind of things they want to experience. True.
Kathy M.K. McDaniel, thank you so much for being willing to share your experience. I do really want to express how grateful I am that you're willing to share some of that here with us today.
Thank you for having me on, and it's a real thrill to be here with my friend Bob. That turned out really nicely.
Yeah. That's another thing. Thanks for putting all this together. I mean, it was Kathy that really coordinated all this. We're all in different time zones, and it wasn't that simple, but we made it.
No, it was not. No. I'm really glad that that's all worked out. It gives a nice balance. Bob has done extensive interviews and lots of information, and I just went there. So I had the same background as Bob in that I was raised a Roman Catholic, and my parents were very adamant that we all go to church, and I always went to Catholic schools. And yes, I was taught about purgatory and hell, and we even went so far to learn about the indulgences. If you did an extra rosary or you went to mass an extra time, you got, up to 300 days off your time in purgatory. So it was always in your consciousness that you are going to go there, no matter that Jesus died for your sins and any of that stuff. There's going to be time, so you better get used to it. So I bought it, and when I got really sick after taking care of a friend for several months while he was having leukemia treatments, I got very ill on a flu that was going around, and on the way to a emergency room situation, when I went to get out of the car, I was gone, and my friend carried me in. They couldn't find a pulse, got me to the hospital, and then put me, I was intubated and told I had lung failure, and they didn't know if they could save me or not. So they were going to put me in a drug-induced coma. And I really didn't have a choice. And they just told me, as the last thing they said was, we're going to give you this type of amnesia drug that's going to put you out, and you will be unable to remember anything that happens. Nothing. Brains offline. So I did wake up in there, and I turned out later to understand that was called the void. It's completely black, and there's no sound, and it's not scary or anything. You just kind of hang out. But then mine did morph into a situation that was very uncomfortable. I mean, I knew I was in a very scary place when the demon asked me a question, do you know where you are? I said, hell? And this maniacal laugh came back. My experience was one of segments. I would find myself in a peculiar, usually threatening situation, and there were demons, and there were zombies, and there were all kinds of terrible critters roaming around there. And I was told I would be working there, and I was given things to do, which were disgusting and immoral, and I was always bucking it. That was the misfit in hell thing. So finally, I did manage to get out, and when I did the thing where you just blow up with love, and it was obviously an interaction, entwining, dissolving into God, and that was the light and all that, and it was fantastic. And I did get to see my friend who I'd been taking care of, and he died the month before. And instead of looking like a poor leukemia victim, he looked great. He looked about 35 instead of 53. And I asked him, I says, I know what's going on. Why are we standing here? Come on, show me around. But he came a little closer and said, no, Mary Kay, you've got too much left to do. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're throwing me out. And I said, no. Of course, then boom, I'm back and I'm in the hospital and I can't move or talk. And it was a bad situation. I was very depressed for a long time, and nobody would listen to my story. And through a series of synchronicities, 10 years later, I was led to the IONS group, and it was wonderful to hear all these other people who had very similar experiences. But until I found Howard Storm's book, I felt very alone, because all these other people, had the angels and the butterflies and all that stuff. And I had a different experience. So through IONS, they begged me to tell my story, because only about less than 20% of people have the distressing types. And reluctantly, I did so. But the reception from these people was so overwhelmingly positive that I was able to look at everything differently and to relax around it and to embrace my new community. And that was about 12 years ago. And it's just been wonderful ever since. I know it took me a long time to figure out what the heck was happening. But when I heard about planning your own life and all of that, I thought, what was I thinking? But it started to unfold that was a positive thing. I mean, I've been on a lot of podcasts. I've done a lot of sharing about it. And the response has always been overwhelmingly positive. Especially for people who've had distressing ones. They're coming out of the woodwork now. We've got a nice little IONS sharing group that's for the distressing people. And it's amazing how many of them come to that and listen quietly it's once a month. They'll be there a month, and they'll be 2 months. And then they'll say, okay, I'm ready to talk. And they'll say, that's the first time I've ever told anybody what happened to me. And it's been such a wonderful fellowship. It's been very rewarding.
IONS is a wonderful organization. Thank you so much for sharing that. I had a question about, in terms of those others that have, that 20% that have also had distressing NDEs. From your knowledge, do you know that of whether or not most of them end up getting out of it, or have any woken from their NDE, pop back into their body without having seen any light, just come straight out of the distress, so to speak?
I haven't heard of that. Usually they are sent back, but boy, that's a wonderful thing. But the hell thing is so hard to get rid of. And I'm going to say that 80 or 90% of the people I talk to that have had these experiences are Catholics.
That's interesting.
Recovering Catholics, we call ourselves now. And I mean, I loved my religion growing up. I loved Jesus and I loved all that other stuff. But like Bob, I could never, I couldn't say, wait a minute, here's this loving father, the prodigal son. I could hang my hat on that one and say, okay, that's the truth. This other stuff is BS. And it's been really a relief for a lot of us to be able to get together and actually joke about, okay, we bought that hook, line, and sinker, but aren't we fortunate to be able to know that's not true and to be able to come back and share that with people? So they, I don't really think that people ever go to hell or have that experience. I think you only go to have the experience to come back and share that good news. It's not like that, people. Give up that stinking thinking. It's just not like that.
Yeah, yeah. And without going into any great detail about what you were experiencing at that very time, but can you just tell us how you got out of it personally and how you ended up in a much brighter realm?
Yeah, that's the secret password, which is funny. When I got back, it took a long time to figure out that I had taken hellish experiences in my own actual life and brought them with me to make my own hell. I think that's what a lot of people do. So at the very end of this thing, I was in a very bad situation again with a demon lady and a bunch of us ladies who had been sexually assaulted and waiting for customers. So I said to her, oh my gosh, I've been here a long time and this seems like a particularly bad instance vibe. What's going on? And she says, oh, well, it's Christmas on earth. That's always the worst day in hell. And I thought, hell? That was the first time it dawned on me, because you don't feel dead when you're over there because you are your spirit. You're not your body. And when you were talking earlier about that, I envision it as my spirit is like me getting in my car. I'm not my car, but it gets me around. And then when I'm parking, I get out and that's me. Well, our soul is us living in this car. So I had always been fighting back on all these situations. I found myself in that realm. And so when she said Christmas, I thought, well, this will tick her off. And I started singing a Christmas carol. And I guess partly because of my beliefs, when I came to the part that it was away in a manger, no crib for his bed, the little Lord, I got to that part. She turned around, screamed, jumped at me. I covered my eyes and boom, I'm in heaven. So I didn't say the word Jesus, but it was coming. And other people said, for crying out loud, you're a Christian your whole life when you were down there. Why didn't you call on Jesus? Why didn't you call on God? A, I didn't know I was dead. And B, I don't think that perception of God is even in a realm like that. And C, I planned it, to get out eventually and to bring this story back. But yeah, of course, God's the answer to everything.
It's extraordinary. Wow. Thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing that.
There's one thing that's very important to tell, and that's that distressing NDEs, that's what comes from research done by others, and I repeat that in my book, is that distressing NDEs are not only, you cannot say that bad people get distressing NDEs and good people get blissful NDEs. There are so many stories that go against this. Like MK McDaniel today is just a common, ordinary woman without any, she didn't do any particular bad thing. She's just as bad as any one of us. On the other hand, there are people like Daniel Brinkley, who wrote a book together with Paul Perry, who wrote about his life and how bad he was. He was such a nasty person, as he said himself, because he was bullying children in school. He stole their bikes, was in countless fights. He went into an American organization that went abroad to kill off people that were against the US government. And at one time, he blew up a whole hotel with more than 50 people in it just to get out one. Now, Kathy didn't do that, yet she had a distressing NDE, and Daniel Brinkley did it and had a wonderful NDE. So these are just two examples where we can say that is not how it works. And then there needs to be another explanation, and the other explanation is something that Kathy alluded to, is that your own mind is still working, or you tap into the collective conscious with all those horrible images, and they pop up from your own experience. And I think Kathy had judgments on AIDS and prostitution, and that went into her. Those were a concept or parts of her distressing NDE. So it is something that is created in your mind, and it can happen actually to everyone. And and I want to stress again, to give a positive note, that I don't believe that there is a hell that people can go to. It is a creation of your own minds or something like that. And I know that there are NDEers who explicitly say or have heard that there is no hell or purgatory. Like Chris Carlson, he said, I explicitly heard that there's no hell or purgatory. And one other said, we all go home to that wonderful area, no exceptions. So that on a positive note, I wanted to leave you all with that.
I thank you for that. And I agree. I think that our consciousness in general is just, it's a very, very large, powerful entity. And, it's amazing what can be presented to us, what we need, or in conjunction with what, we were going through at the time of our transition, I'm sure has a lot to do with what we experienced. There's a number of people that, will tell you, look, I was in hell. You're not going to tell me I wasn't in hell, because it was just so real, And so I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think it's important for people to understand that.
Okay, I just wanted to point out the book by Kathy. It's a good read, and it's wonderful. And maybe also this book
for sure.
Published by Irons. They're both there.
I look forward to reading both of those. I'm going to, like I said, I'll put the descriptions also in the links in the description box, so everyone has a way to get a hold of those. Thank you so much again. Blessings to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.